all you lovely fans of the 80s, and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music. I'm the 80s Mixtaper, and in today's episode, we complete the musical smorgasbord, which is playlist 22, April 1981, covering tracks 8 to 13. And talking of smorgasbords, I think it's worth a moment just to talk about 1981 so far, because it has been, it's fair to say, a weird year. Whereas 1980 was definable, the death of disco, punk's on its last legs, ska is in bloom, the new wave is in effect, reggae is here and there, and synth pop is stretching its legs. 1981 is odd, just plain odd. If you've followed this pod since the beginning, you're probably beginning to notice that in 81, sure, there's big hits like Vienna, but most of it feels like bands trying stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's birthing bands like Echo and the Bunnymen and Depeche Mode. We're also getting Duran Duran and Spandau, but not the creamy good stuff yet. One song is a one-hit ballad, the next is rockabilly, the next is a little-known post-punk tune, the next one is some American soul. It's a year when anyone can be anything. It's experimental, but I appreciate it's also a little jarring when we hop from one genre to the next. From one massive artist to one who only ever reached number 56 in the charts for a perfectly good song. When we think of the 80s, we think of Tears for Fears passionately singing Everybody Wants to Rule the World, or Madonna, all hot pinks and black lace gloves, belting out one of many hits. We think of the polished neon splash gloss of it all. And if you've been listening to 1981 along with me, you know, that ain't it, not by a long way. The decadence, the happy freedom, the Duran Duran men on a yacht in pastel suits isn't yet. It's coming, but if you want playlist after playlist of good grief, another hit, that doesn't really land until we're well into late 1982, and then we get this ridiculous swell that runs up until about 1987, where it feels like every tune is massive. But until then, at times, this may feel like being hit with a shotgun of genres. But that's this pod, baby. Buckle up. There's still loads of good songs and great artists, it has to be said. And some of the sounds coming up are era-defining, but it will feel chaotic. But stick with it. It's worth it. Trust me, I've done it. But let's get stuck back into things. So what do we have for you today on the latter half of Playlist 22? Well, we meet the longest running all-female rock band. We get extra cheesy with Barry Manilow. We embrace one of the sappiest instrumentals of the 80s, a song which, if you were a kid in the decade, you'll definitely know from your parents, but probably not know what it was called. We meet Bauhaus, the dark glam goth pioneers. We get Level 42 laying down the blueprint for everything great from them to come, and then we end with some ska reggae crossover from The Beat. As usual, we can't play the songs on the pod due to copyright laws, but fear not. If you visit the episode description, you'll find links to playlists for both Spotify and Apple Music, so you can play along at home, plus a full track listing if your pod platform doesn't support hyperlinks. And with that, let's get back to the music. Okay folks, we start today in the leather-clad riff-ripping world of Girlschool and their 1981 single Hit and Run. This is our one and only date with the South London heavy metal pioneers, so we're going to crank up the amps to 11. It's April 1981, the new wave of British heavy metal is tearing through the UK like a runaway Buick, and Girlschool, four women with zero patience for nonsense, are right in the thick of it, swinging harder than most of their peers. Let's tell their story, the song, and why this moment in 1981 felt like a fist through a glass ceiling. This is track 8, Playlist 22. Girlschool started in 1978, born from the ashes of a cover band called Painted Lady. Kim McAuliffe on guitar and vocals, Enid Williams on bass and vocals, Kelly Johnson on guitar and vocals, and Denise Dufour on drums were young, scrappy, and ready to shred. They caught a break when Motorhead's Lemmy Kilminster heard their early single Take It All Away and dragged them onto the Overkill tour. By 1980, they'd inked a deal with Bronze Records, dropped their debut album Demolition, which hit number 28 on the UK albums chart, and were trading metaphorical musical punches with the likes of Iron Maiden and Saxon. They toured with Black Sabbath, Uriah Heep, and of course Motorhead, with whom they'd record the St Valentine's Day Massacre EP, a number 5 UK single in February 1981. Girlschool weren't a tokenistic, the all-female metal band. They were a band, period, and they earned their stripes in a scene that didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for women. Hit and Run, the title track from their second album, released April 1981 on Bronze Records. The album itself was a beast, peaking at number 5 on the UK albums chart, their biggest commercial win. The single, backed by Tonight on the 7-inch and ZZ Top's Tush on the 10-inch, climbed to number 32 on the UK singles chart. Recorded at Jackson's studio in Rickmansworth from December 1980 to January 1981, with Vic Mail at the helm, the track is 3 minutes of pure unfiltered adrenaline. It's got that Motorhead snarl, greasy, fast and unapologetic, but with a punky edge and vocals that cut like a switchblade. Kelly Johnson's guitar riffs churn, Kim McAuliffe's rhythm locks it down, and Denise DeFort's drums hit like a sledgehammer. Enid Williams' bass is the glue, rumbling under every hook. Lyrically, Hit and Run is a kiss off to a liar who's all talk and no heart. The first verse sets the scene. I was out in the cold, alone in the night. How could I carry on? Felt so empty inside. The chorus lands the punch. All you gave me were promises, nothing better than lies. Hit and run, hit and run. This is a song about betrayal and moving on, delivered with a sneer and a slap. By the third verse, but I know better now, I found another way. One thing I know for sure, I'm gonna live for today. You ready to burn your ex's mixtape and crank up the stereo? This isn't polished arena rock, it's a bar fight in song form. Girlschool played it on Top of the Pops on April the 16th, 1981, miming to a crowd that probably didn't know what hit them. The song's energy carried the album to number 50 in Canada, where it went gold and even cracked New Zealand's charts at number 49. In the US, Stiff Records released a version in 1982, swapping some tracks with Demolition cuts, but it never got the love it deserves stateside. Girlschool's legacy with Hit and Run is complicated. They kept grinding through the 80s, but chart success faded as metal evolved. Enid Williams left in 1982, returned in 2004, and left again in 2019. Kelly Johnson, the band's spark plug, passed away in 2007. Yet, they're still out there touring and recording, with Guilty as Sin dropping in 2015. Hit and Run remains their high watermark, a snapshot of a band that didn't care about fitting in, just kicking the door down and kicking the door open. But we're featuring them for one very important accomplishment. Girlschool is recognised as the longest running all-female rock band, having been active since 1978. So there you have it, folks. For track 9, we're diving back into the soft rock saga of Barry Manilow, the man who could make a piano sound like it's confessing its deepest secrets, and a big favourite of my mum. Last time, we left Barry riding the bittersweet wave of I Made It Through the Rain, as recently as episode 19, a top 10 US hit that felt like a warm hug from a guy who's been through some stuff. Now, Barry's throwing us a curveball with Bermuda Triangle, a single from his self-titled album Barry. This isn't your typical Manilow tearjerker, it's a playful, almost cheeky jaunt that leans into the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, but with a twist that's more about romantic misadventures than vanishing ships. Press play now. Let's set the scene. It's 1981 and Barry Manilow's at a weird crossroads. His album Barry, released in November 1980, didn't crack the US top 10, stalling at number 15, a rare miss for a guy used to dominating the charts. But across the pond, the UK was still very much in favour. Bermuda Triangle, released as a single in April 1981, hit number 15 on the UK singles chart and hung around for 9 weeks, a respectable showing for a song that's more quirky than anthemic. It also reached number 16 in Germany and number 23 in Ireland, proving Barry's international pull was still strong. Written by Barry alongside Bruce Sussman and Jack Feldman, the track clocks in at 3:45 and was recorded at Evergreen Recording Studios in Burbank, California, as part of the Barry album, which eventually went platinum despite its chart struggles. So what is Bermuda Triangle all about? It's a story song, almost a mini musical, with a tongue-in-cheek take on the infamous region where ships and planes supposedly vanish. But here, the real mystery isn't UFOs or magnetic anomalies, it's the fickle nature of love. The lyrics kick off with a couple planning a sunny getaway. We decide to get away and have some fun, book a room and catch a flight for 2 weeks in the sun. She says Hawaii's too expensive, I say Barbados isn't bad. She said I'd love to see Bermuda, and I say woman, are you mad? Barry's narrator is sceptical, warning about the triangle's reputation. Bermuda Triangle, it makes people disappear. Bermuda Triangle, don't go too near. But his partner brushes him off, and off they go. The song's middle act is where things get spicy. Our guy's chilling on the beach when his woman ditches him for a stranger. Lying with my woman on the island sand, I look up and see her with a stranger hand in hand. He's gutted, chasing after her only to find her running off with this new dude. The chorus hits again now with a sting. Bermuda Triangle makes my woman disappear. Bermuda Triangle, don't go too near. Looking at it from my angle, do you see why I'm so sad? Oh, Bermuda Triangle, very bad. But Barry doesn't leave us in the dumps. In a classic rom-com twist, a lovely stranger approaches and suddenly he's back in the game. When a lovely stranger says hello and takes my hand, and soon she's sitting on my blanket, and then we're going for a swim. When he asks about her boyfriend, she casually waves him off and Barry flips the script. Bermuda Triangle, it makes people disappear. Bermuda Triangle, don't go too near. But look at it from my angle and you'll see why I'm so glad. Now Bermuda Triangle, not so bad. Musically, the track is a departure. It's got tonicizations, a cycle of fifths, and a brief modulation to the tonic minor to mirror the narrator's romantic loss, a nerdy touch that shows Barry's Juilliard-honed chops. On stage, he'd ham it up, sometimes with models or audience volunteers acting out the love triangle, turning it into a light-hearted spectacle. This was Barry leaning into his theatrical side, a nod to his early days writing jingles and scoring off Broadway musicals like The Drunkard. The song's vibe is almost vaudevillian, a far cry from the earnestness of Mandy or I Write the Songs. Chart-wise, Bermuda Triangle was no world beater, but it held its own. It debuted on the UK charts on April 11th, 1981, and its 9-week run showed Barry could still pull a crowd, even with a novelty track. Compare this to his other 1981 UK singles, Let's Hang On, which hit number 12 for 11 weeks, and The Old Songs, which reached number 48 for 8 weeks. Stateside, it didn't crack the Billboard Hot 100, but Barry's bigger hit, I Made It Through the Rain, kept the album afloat. The song's modest success feels right. It's a fun detour, not a career-defining banger. What's fascinating is how Bermuda Triangle captures Barry at his most playful. This is a guy who'd been grinding since the 60s, churning out jingles for Band-Aid and Pepsi, then skyrocketing to fame with hits like Could It Be Magic. By 1981, he's got the confidence to take a swing at something goofy, poking fun at his own romantic woes while winking at the audience. It's not deep, but it's clever, with that modulation underscoring the emotional pivot from very bad to not so bad. And let's be real, only Barry Manilow could make a song about getting dumped in the Bermuda Triangle feel like a breezy beach party. So, where does this leave us? Bermuda Triangle is Barry Manilow embracing the absurd, trading torch songs for a quick dip in the ocean of light-hearted storytelling. It's a snapshot of an artist willing to mess around and have fun. If we've learnt anything, it's to keep your beach blanket close and your strangers at arm's length. Next up, we're sliding headfirst into a track which seemed omnipresent on radio in the early 80s. I personally thought it was incredibly sappy at the time. It's a track that's as haunting as a foggy night in a spaghetti western, but somehow improbably became a pop chart darling in 1981. We're talking Ennio Morricone's Chi Mai, a piece that feels like it's floating in from another dimension, all strings and melancholy, yet it climbed to number 2 on the UK singles chart. This is all about the spaghetti western maestro himself, This is track 10. Ennio Morricone, born November the 10th, 1928 in Rome, Italy, was a musical polymath, composer, orchestrator, conductor, trumpeter. The guy could do it all. He cut his teeth in the 1940s arranging pop songs and studying at the Conservatorio di Santa Cecilia. By the 1960s, he was the king of film scores, especially for Sergio Leone's westerns like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. His music was unique in that it was a character. Gritty, sweeping, weirdly emotional. Whistles, coyote howls, electric guitars, choirs. He threw it all in the pot. Over his career, he scored over 500 films and TV shows, from Once Upon a Time in America to The Thing. He won an Oscar in 2016 for The Hateful Eight, but honestly, he should have had a shelf full of them. Morricone passed in 2020 at 91, leaving a legacy that's still untouchable. Now, Chi Mai. This track, written in 1971, was a slow burner. It first showed up in the obscure Italian film Maddalena, and then got recycled in the French thriller Le Professionnel with Jean-Paul Belmondo, and the British TV series An Englishman's Castle in 1978. But it was the BBC's 1981 series The Life and Times of David Lloyd George that made it a hit. The show, a historical drama about the British Prime Minister, used Chi Mai as its theme, and the single, released by BBC Records, rode that wave to number 2 on the UK singles chart in April 1981. It hung around for 12 weeks, a slow burn success in a chart dominated by Bucks Fizz and Adam and the Ants. A re-release in 1983, tied to the same show, hit number 85 for 2 weeks. So why did this instrumental, this orchestral sigh, chart so well? 1981's UK charts were a melting pot. New wave, post-punk, early MTV vibes. You've got Ultravox's Vienna brooding nearby, but most hits were punchy, vocal-driven, or outright goofy. Chi Mai is none of that. It's a lush, string-heavy piece. No lyrics in the hit version, just a melody that feels like it's mourning something you can't name. Its roots trace back to a 1968 Morricone piece, Invito all'amore, for the Great Silence, but it's softer, more refined here. The BBC series gave it context. Viewers heard it over images of Lloyd George's life, and it stuck. Plus, it had that French connection. In France, Chi Mai was huge, partly because it was used by the Royal Canine dog food ad. Imagine that, a dog food commercial, making a classical piece iconic. By 1981, it was a cultural earworm crossing borders and mediums. The melody itself is a masterclass in less is more. It's built on a simple repeating string motif, layered with piano and subtle percussion. It's cinematic, but it's also intimate, like it's whispering directly to you. There are lyrics written by Carlo Nistri in 1972, but they're not on the 1981 single. In terms of what they are, they're quite sparse and poetic. Chi mai, non sa chi sia, which translates to whoever doesn't know who it is, doesn't know who it is. It's vague, almost existential, fitting the track's mood. But the UK hit was instrumental, so those lyrics stayed in the shadow. So why did it chart? Timing, for one. The BBC series was a prestige drama, and Chi Mai was its emotional pulse. People were watching, and the music lingered. It also tapped into a weird nostalgia. Morricone's sound evoked the grandeur of old films, but polished for a new audience. And let's not forget the power of TV. Theme songs were huge in the 80s. Think Hill Street Blues or Dallas. Chi Mai hit that sweet spot where familiarity bred obsession. Morricone himself was a genius at this, taking a melody and making it feel universal. Chi Mai wasn't trying to be a pop hit, but it became one because it was undeniable. It's the kind of track that makes you stop, listen, and wonder what the hell just hit you. In France, it was a dog food ad. In the UK, it was Lloyd George. In your head, it's something else entirely. Track 11, and we are a few miles down the road from me currently in Northampton, England, where Bauhaus, those four dudes with a knack for black eyeliner and razor-sharp lyrics, drop Kick in the Eye. A single that's like a punch you didn't see coming but somehow needed. Let's get into their story up to this moment and why this song feels like a weird, funky, gothic fever dream. Bauhaus started in 1978 when Daniel Ash, a guitarist with a thing for jagged riffs, roped in his old school buddy, Peter Murphy, who was working a dead-end job at a printing factory. Ash didn't care that Murphy had never sung or written a lyric, he just thought the guy looked like a frontman. That's the vibe of Bauhaus, instinct over polish. Ash's pal, David J. Haskins, came in on bass, and David's younger brother, Kevin Haskins, took the drums. They called themselves Bauhaus 1919, nodding to the German art school that mixed craft with avant-garde weirdness, but dropped the 1919 within a year. Their first gig was a mess, but they clicked fast, writing songs like In the Flat Field in early rehearsals. In 1979, they cut their debut single, Bela Lugosi's Dead, a 9-minute dirge about vampires and despair that didn't chart but became a goth anthem. Released on Small Wonder Records, it got them noticed. They signed with 4AD in 1980, dropped their debut album In the Flat Field, which hit number 72 on the UK Albums Chart, and toured relentlessly. The album was raw, all sharp edges and Murphy's wail, but 4AD's limited resources couldn't keep up with their growing cult status. By 1981, they jumped to Beggars Banquet Records, ready to shake things up. Enter Kick in the Eye, released March the 27th, 1981, as their second single from their sophomore album Mask. It peaked at number 59 on the UK singles chart, not exactly setting the world on fire, but marking their first chart entry. The track's a departure from their earlier gloom. It's got a funky, almost danceable groove, with Kevin's drums locking in like a heartbeat and David J's bass slinking around like it's got somewhere shady to be. Ash's guitar stabs are less abrasive here, more rhythmic, and Murphy's vocals are visceral and howling like he's chasing some cosmic truth. The song's produced by the band themselves, every member credited: Murphy, Ash, David J, and Kevin Haskins. Lyrically, it's cryptic but loaded, and he spoke of pastures green, I was never told why. Each journey lasts an age, and my throat feels dry. It must be the lesson, hidden deep inside. It must be the lesson, so roll the tide. The chorus just hammers Kick in the Eye over and over like a mantra. The song's title comes from Jack Kerouac's Satori in Paris, where he calls sudden enlightenment a kick in the eye. Bauhaus lean into that, with Murphy's delivery feeling like he's grappling with some spiritual quest, maybe sobriety versus drunken creativity, maybe just the grind of existence. The word Satori pops up, searching for Satori, the kick in the eye, Japanese for awakening, tying it to that Kerouac nod. Mask, released October 1981, hit number 30 on the UK Albums Chart, showing Bauhaus stretching out. They tossed in keyboards, saxophone, even acoustic guitar, and Kick in the Eye was their funky experiment, a track that could fill a dance floor at a goth club, but still unsettle you. The single's B-side had In Fear of Fear, and a 12-inch version included a rare misprint with Poison Pen instead of In Fear of Dub. In 1982, they re-released it as an EP, Kick in the Eye Searching for Satori, with a louder guitar mix, hitting number 45 on the UK chart. Before Kick in the Eye, Bauhaus were those scrappy kids from Northampton playing taboo themes, madness, obsession, martyrdom. Their live shows, inspired by a Judas Priest concert Murphy saw, used stark black and white lighting for maximum drama. By 1981, they were on the cusp of something bigger, with Mask proving they weren't just a one-trick pony. Kick in the Eye is Bauhaus at their most accessible, but still weird as hell. A song that dares you to dance while staring into the void. For our penultimate track on Playlist 22, we're diving back into the neon-soaked bass-slapping world of Level 42, picking up where we left off with their earlier single, Love Meeting Love. That track from 1980 was a scrappy little jazz-funk jam that got them noticed by Polydor Records. But now, in 1981, we're talking about Love Games, their proper debut single from their self-titled album, and this is where things start to snap into focus. This isn't just a step forward from Love Meeting Love, it's a full-on sprint towards the slick, hook-heavy sound that'll define their monster hits later in the 80s like Something About You and Lessons in Love. This is track 12. Love Games dropped in April 1981, and it's the first single off Level 42, the band's debut album. It's a jazz-funk dance hybrid that's equal parts sweaty dance floor energy and cool, calculated musicianship. The song hit number 38 on the UK singles chart, which doesn't sound earth-shattering, but for the jazz-funk scene just breaking out, it's huge. This was their first crack at the UK Top 40, and it landed them a slot on top of the Pops, the holy grail of British music TV at the time. Picture Mark King with his signature slap bass style grooving under those garish studio lights, while Mike Lindup's falsetto harmonies float over the top like a funky angel. That's the moment Level 42 announced themselves to the world. The track itself, produced by Mike Vernon, clocks in at around 4 minutes and 4 seconds for the single edit, though the full-length version stretches out to a glorious 5 minutes and 10, giving you all the room to lose yourself in its bass-driven hypnosis. King's bass here provides the whole skeleton, pulsing with this infectious, pedalling, thumb-popping energy that literally made me pick up a bass guitar when I was 16. The lyrics, penned by the Gould brothers Phil and Boone, are raw and pleading, capturing the push-pull of a love that's equal parts obsession and frustration. As I watch your face, I can see my life go by. You mean everything to me, just can't take no more. King's deep tenor sells the desperation, while the chorus with lines like, do lovers ever need to hide the things they really feel inside, hits you with that universal ache of wanting someone who's playing hard to get. What makes Love Games feel like a progression towards Level 42's later hits is how it balances their jazz-funk roots with a pop sensibility that's starting to creep in. It is unmistakably Level 42, from the falsetto chorus to Mark King's bass picking, even down to the keyboard runs and settings. Compared to Love Meeting Love, which was looser and more improvisational, this track is tighter, more structured, with a hook that sticks in your brain like gum on a shoe. You can hear the seeds of the polished pop funk of Running in the Family in 1987 here, but it's still got that raw edge, that sense of a band figuring out who they are. The B-side 42 is a quirky instrumental that shows off their chops, but it's Love Games that carries the weight. It's got that dance floor magnetism. Genius notes that it was their first single to chart globally, and you can feel why. It's got legs. The band's sound, jazz funk with a pop sheen, wasn't exactly tearing up the charts in 81, a year when synth pop and new wave were starting to dominate. But Love Games stood out because it didn't sound like anything else. It wasn't Duran Duran's glossy romance or the Police's reggae-tinged rock. It was Level 42 carving out their own lane. The song's success was also about the band's hustle. That Top of the Pops appearance was a game changer, exposing them to a massive audience. And while it peaked at number 38 in the UK, it laid the groundwork for their later dominance, with 20 top 40 singles in the UK by the end of the 80s. Love Games also got some international love, setting the stage for their US breakthrough years later with Something About You, which hit number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1986, a song we will definitely hear on this pod. But back in 81, they were still the underdogs, and this song was their scrappy declaration of intent. Listening to it now, Love Games feels like a nearly there entry, almost the thing which made them big but not quite. The bass line still slaps, the groove still moves, and those lyrics, they hit you in the gut. Once I hoped to be your lover and your friend, it just can't go on, your Love Games. It's a song about wanting something real and getting tangled in someone else's head games, and who hasn't been there? The production, courtesy of Mike Vernon, is crisp but not over-polished, letting the band's raw talent shine through. You can hear why Earth, Wind and Fire's Larry Dunn and Verdine White later wanted to work with them. There's a kinship in how Level 42 blends funk, soul and pop into something that feels alive. If Love Meeting Love was Level 42 dipping their toes in the water, Love Games is them diving in head first. It's the one that put them on the map, the one that announced them to the general public. By the time they hit their peak with Running in the Family, they'd refined this sound to something glossier, but Love Games has a truth and urgency that makes it special. It's the sound of a band hungry, not just for success, but for a chance to show what they could do. And they did it with a bass line that could wake the dead and a chorus that's still stuck in your head 40 years later. For our final song on playlist 22, we are back with The Beat, those Birmingham ska punk alchemists who we last met jittering through the mirror-fogged anxiety of Mirror in the Bathroom, all the way back on playlist 9. That was 1980, their debut album I Just Can't Stop It, crackling with rude boy energy and nervy introspection. Now, a year later, they're back with Wappen, their sophomore record, and the lead single Drowning, a song that's less a punch to the face than a slow cold plunge into a murky river of dread. This is the beat growing up, or at least growing uneasy, trading some of their early bounce for a heavier, more haunted groove, while the ska movement just starts to teeter on the brink. This is track 13, our final song. Mirror in the Bathroom was the beat at their most kinetic, a song about staring down your own paranoia in a cocaine-dusted club. It peaked at number 4 on the UK singles chart in May 1980, a banger that defined their early sound. Dave Wakeling's keening vocals, Ranking Rogers toasting, Everett Morton's skittering drums, and Sax's saxophone weaving through it all like cigarette smoke. Wappen, released in May 1981, isn't that record. The world's changed. Thatcher's Britain is grinding harder, unemployment spiking, riots are brewing, and the beat sound has darkened to match. Drowning, their first single off the new album, doesn't skank so much as it slinks, with a bass line from David Steele that feels like it's dragging you under, and a guitar riff that stabs like a bad decision. Lyrically, Drowning is a grim meditation on capitalism's chokehold, the kind of song that makes you feel like you're auditing your own soul. Wakeling sings, "Compromise around the corner, can you hear the accountant's call? Could you refuse another dollar? Could you stop yourself from falling?" It's about the weight of choices, the way ambition and survival tangle up until you're gasping for air. Then Ranking Rogers' verse kicks in later, a patois-laced warning. "You want figure in the ocean, or so me say. I saw you drowning in slow motion, and now me learn, far too late to make a commotion." It's vivid, almost cinematic, like watching someone slip under the waves while you're stuck on shore. The chorus, you're drowning, round and round and round, is less a hook than a mantra, repetitive and relentless, like the panic it describes. Chart-wise, Drowning didn't soar like Mirror. It peaked at number 22 on the UK chart in May 81, hanging around for 8 weeks. Respectable, but not a juggernaut. Maybe it was too moody, too introspective for a pop scene, still buzzing with new waves glitter and two-tones frenetic optimism. The Beats label, Go Feet, paired it with All Out to Get You, a nervy song that's more in line with their earlier sprint. The production, handled by Bob Sargent, is sparse but deliberate. Morton's drums hit like footsteps on wet pavement, and Andy Cox's guitar cuts through the mix with jagged precision. Sax's sax, usually a warm counterpoint here, feels like a distant ambivalence as a counterpoint, like the upper classes swanning off and doing their own thing. It's a song that sounds like it's holding its breath, and when Rogers' toasting drops, it's like the surface breaks, just for a second before you're pulled back under. The Beat were always masters of tension, but Drowning leans into it harder, less about dancing than surviving. 1981 was a brutal year in the UK. The Brixton riots erupted in April. Handsworth would follow in July. The Beat, a multiracial band from Birmingham's industrial heart, weren't just observers, they lived this friction. Their music always carried a political edge. Think Stand Down Margaret from 1980, but Drowning feels personal, like they're wrestling with their own place in a system that chews up dreamers. Wakeling's vocals, usually sharp and defiant, sound weary here, like he's singing while thinking about where the next check will come from. Compared to I Just Can't Stop It, Wappen is divisive. Some fans wanted more of the debut's high-octane ska, others heard growth in its dubby, expansive sound. Drowning splits the difference. It's got the band's signature rhythm, but a heavier heart. It's not their flashiest single, that's probably Mirror in the Bathroom, or Can't Get Used to Losing You, which hit number 3 in 1983 and one we'll definitely hear, but it's their most claustrophobic, a snapshot of a band staring down a darker road. So that is it for playlist 22, and what a mixed bag it was, I think it's fair to say. So what do we have for playlist 23? Well, 2 rockabilly songs, count them 2, and you say I don't play rockabilly. We introduce Echo and the Bunnymen, 10-Pole Tudor, and the Human League to the mix. We're back with stalwarts The Clash, The Undertones and Madness. If you're a Deadpool fan, you'll love a particular song by Juice Newton, and we nearly end the playlist with some Smokey Robinson. And then we end the playlist proper with one of the pivotal film moments of the 80s as the decade blossoms into the time we all remember, courtesy of Vangelis. Have a wonderful week, and until next time, take care.